why I love doing it. Let's start with priorities. Now, the most obvious of questions. What makes a great pitch? What makes a great pitch? And there would be obviously a couple of categories. You will have very little time. You will have less time to deliver your pitch, remember, than I have now to explain to you what makes a great pitch. So that's a priority to think about. But what makes a great speech? So the first possibly is content, quality, and discipline. And that's a given. Obviously, we can skip that because if you have solid content, if your idea is great, if your code is great, if it's something that's a pleasure to study, explore, and look into, then, the conversation is basically over. Even if you're not a great speaker, you will succeed in this hackathon because your material will defend the quality of your delivery. And I'm sure our jury will see that. So quality and content discipline matters, especially when you have very little time. Good structure, it obviously always matters. What is good structure? Good structure is not necessarily having a chronological flow of things, how they unfold. Good structure is a creatively good structure, like starting right in the middle, or starting in the middle of a specific story, or starting in the middle of identifying a specific problem, something that people may be truly interested. Now, you remember when I introduced the areas that I'm professionally keeping myself busy with, I put a joke above about me section. I said, me, myself, and I. Me, myself, and I. That's the most common mistake that people make in pitches and speeches. They are mentally focused on themselves. They're essentially thinking about, what does it do for me? What does it help me with? Whereas the best strategy you could ever adopt is always, without exception, thinking about your audience, putting yourself in their shoes. And that has a lot to do with stress management, because a lot of people think, okay, there is this audience, and instinctively, because the reason we get stressed in front of an audience on a stage, we get very stressed easily for a couple of reasons. But one reason is that we think the people watching us and listening to us are our enemies. They want to judge us, criticize us, laugh at us. That's why we do certain things intuitively, almost instinctively. So imagine you have a big auditorium at an important conference, whether it's your company conference or any broader conference, and you imagine you're standing there in the spotlight and you respond to the audience emotionally. How do you do that? For instance, if suddenly you see that the number of lights reflected in people's faces from smartphones in the audience is on the increase, that increases your stress level because you think they're not listening to me, I'm boring, something wrong is happening. Or if people are putting laptops on their laps and working, same. Or if they're not looking at you, or if you hear people chatting in the background, you instantly feel there is something wrong with your presentation. Now, there are a number of mental exercises that you can try to change this perception. First thing, and one thing to remember about this part is never to think about the people at the end of your presentation, at the receiving end of your presentation, as your enemies. Try and imagine they're actually your friends. They are there because you have something to share. You have something important to say to them. That's why they're there. Good structure is essentially about being able to remember that the first things, the most important things in your presentation should not come last. Hit the nail on the head as soon as you can. Make your point as fast as you can. So what makes a great speech? There are a lot more points, ladies and gentlemen. Stress control is very important because stress shouldn't become a distractor. It shouldn't become a distractor. It shouldn't make the audience feel that, oh, I'm so worried. This person on the stage is so stressed. I'm unable to focus on what he or she is going to say because the stress is at the forefront of everything and kills the actual message, kills the content. Now, let's jump to the next ones. Individual charisma, it's a very broad concept. Most people think that you're either born with charisma or you're not born with charisma. Trust me, you can work hard, rehearse and practice and develop the kind of confidence on the stage in the positive, authentic sense of the word that makes people feel that you're conveying something important, that you're conveying something that matters in their practical experience. Confidence is very important because there are essentially two types of confidence: the right kind of confidence and the wrong kind of confidence. The right type of confidence feels like it's authentic. It wants to share something valuable with you. The wrong kind of confidence is strutting on the stage proudly, just basking in the glory of being me, myself, and I. It's all about me, 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 me. So essentially, that's a very wrong kind of charisma. And believe me, even if you're trying to hide it, it's reflected in so many ways in your body language. The way you walk, the way you gesticulate, wave your hands, the way you respond through your mimicry. We are trained instinctively to detect the wrong kind of confidence, the type that creates an allergic reaction in us, automatically, instinctively. So it's very important not to be in this category, the wrong kind of confident. Now, body language and mimicry, I couldn't really overstate it, in the sense that it's much better if you find it really challenging to stand on the stage, if you're shy and modest and humble, and therefore you have body language challenges, if you look unnatural on the stage, it's better because it's relatable. People feel that all of us have this problem every once in a while, and we remember the experience. Do you remember your first really stressful experience on the stage? Do you remember how strange it felt to actually watch it later? How strange it felt to stand on the stage in the spotlight and ask yourself questions like, what's happening? Why am I sweating? Why has my breath become shorter? Why is it so stressful in the first place, even if you talk to a large group of friends from your company? So that's a shocking experience for many people, especially when there is this spotlight and lamps hitting you straight from the front of the stage, and really uncomfortable experience potentially. So then we go to relevance and relatability. Don't waste time. Always make it relevant. Don't waste time on the big thank yous. I mean, during the pitching contest, everyone says all the thank yous. As presidents, when they address the nations, they always start with thanking everyone all around, and the Joes in a specific state, whoever, just to make it feel relatable, very specific. Be relevant. Do not waste your audience's time. In this case, do not waste the jury's time. And then, first impression. I don't need to tell you what creates the first impression and how, because we have discussed it to a large extent already. But the first impression is really reliant on all those things, especially on your respect for the audience. Respect for the people who are listening to you. Now, there are a couple of more. Authenticity. Authenticity is linked to confidence, but sometimes when we feel that someone is really vulnerable, that someone is the exact opposite of confidence on the stage, it's much more powerful than even the most confident confidence. Not only because we feel it's relatable, but we feel very deeply that this person feels something, and feels something about how they're delivering the material and what they're saying. So as you can see, there are a lot of things to discuss in an environment like what makes a great pitch. I suppose it's a combination of all these things, but depending on the context, depending on the audience, you need to be able to prioritize those things. So basically, that's the map: delivery, speed, and fluency. These things matter. If you feel it's very difficult for you to create a mind map, the story of what you want to share with your audience, then you have no choice but rehearse. Luckily, we're not 30 years back, we are 2021, which means everyone carries a smartphone with them with a good camera and a good sound recording device. So what you can do, boring and frustrating as it can potentially be, is just switch on the camera, record what you think you will say for the time you're allocated with. It's 3 or 4 or 5 minutes in your pitching session, and listen to it. And maybe share it with someone who has some insights about what should be included in a speech like that. Whether in the period that you have been given, you have actually exhausted all the key questions. If you don't do that, if you just take notes and think, okay, I'm going to say these things, you're in for a lot of surprises, because it almost never happens the way you think it's written on paper. So you actually need to say it out loud, record it, and then maybe you will notice there is something seriously annoying or distracting about the way you deliver your presentation. Maybe you're a little too smug doing it, or maybe there is something repetitive in your body language that your audience may find distracting.